Eudaimanya, systems and frameworks to improve habits, mind, and life.
Welcome to Eudaimanya. Today, we're diving into Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning by Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, and Mark A. McDaniel. You know, if you've ever felt totally frustrated by your inability to just remember things you've studied, you're definitely not alone. This book is a real game changer. It basically flips everything we thought we knew about studying, practicing, and mastering new skills completely upside down.
So, let's start with a deeply relatable human problem. Picture this. You pour all this energy into learning something new. You're reading the textbook, highlighting all the important passages, maybe even staying up late cramming. But then when the test finally arrives, or when you actually need to use that knowledge in the real world, it just evaporates. Poof, gone. It is incredibly frustrating, right? Well, the authors point out that the fault doesn't actually lie with our intelligence. It's our methods that are broken.
Section 1. The Illusion of Mastery, the Trap of Easy Learning. To understand why we forget, the authors first expose a trap that pretty much all of us fall into at some point.
Take a look at the habitual error on the left here. Our default strategy is usually relying on rereading and what's called massed practice, which is honestly just a fancy term for cramming. We read our notes over and over until the words just flow. But here's the catch. That fluency creates what the book calls an illusion of knowing. We mistake our comfort with the text for true underlying understanding. The book argues that the true mechanism for building durable memory is actually effortful retrieval practice and self-testing.
The authors propose that we absolutely have to abandon this idea that learning should feel easy, because familiarity with the phrases in a text is definitely not the same as mastering the underlying ideas. Think about it. When you're just running your eyes over a highlighted page, your brain isn't really working. You're recognizing words, sure, but you aren't building those crucial neural pathways you need to recall that information from scratch when it actually matters. Section 2. Retrieve to remember, interrupting the forgetting curve. So how do we build a real solution?
How do we stop newly acquired knowledge from rapidly slipping away? The authors point out a pretty staggering statistic. When we just try to absorb information passively, we lose about 70% of what we just heard or read in a very short amount of time. It completely slips right out of our short-term memory.
So the crucial mechanism to fight this is called the testing effect. The book explains that actively retrieving facts from memory actually interrupts the process of forgetting. Taking a quiz or using flashcards isn't just a dipstick to measure what you've learned. It's the actual physical mechanism that strengthens the neural routes in your brain. Every single time you struggle to pull a fact out of your memory, you're basically telling your brain, hey, this is important, hold on to it.
When the mind has to work, learning sticks better. I absolutely love this quote from the book. It hits the nail on the head. The greater the effort required to retrieve something, the more thoroughly it gets consolidated into your brain. The authors use this great analogy. It's like a child stringing cranberries onto a thread. If there's no knot at the end, they just slip right off. Retrieval is what ties the knot for your memory.
And the evidence for this is clear. According to the book, experiments show that even a single, simple quiz after reading a text stops the forgetting curve in its tracks. It produces way better learning than just rereading the text. This proves that self-quizzing isn't just about getting a good grade. It's a mandatory, everyday tool if you seriously want to retain information for the long haul.
Section 3. Space and interleaved practice. Why cramming fails in the real world. Here, the authors completely dismantle the concept of practice, 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 which, let's face it, we've all been taught is the golden rule of mastery.
Here is another massive error we tend to make. We use blocked practice, meaning we focus single-mindedly on mastering one specific topic or skill before moving on to the next, like doing 20 geometry questions of the exact same type. The problem? The rapid gain you feel melts away incredibly fast because it's only using your short-term memory. The book proposes a much better strategy, interleaving practice. This means deliberately mixing different problem types together while you study.
Along with interleaving, the authors strongly argue for spacing out your practice sessions. Leaving a day or two between sessions forces you to reconstruct the memory. Now, it feels harder, right? Naturally, you get a little rusty and might even feel like you're going backward. But this desirable friction, the struggle to reconstruct the memory from scratch, is exactly what makes the learning durable.
If you doubt how powerful this actually is, just look at this number, 215%. Make It Stick highlights a study where college students were taught to compute the volumes of obscure geometric solids, The students who interleaved the different geometric problems saw a massive 215% improvement on a final test compared to those who just clustered their practice by one problem type at a time. I mean, 215%. That is the sheer power of making your brain work to figure out which solution to apply rather than just blindly going through the motions of how to apply it.
Section 4. Embrace desirable difficulties. The harder the struggle, the stronger the learning. Let's see how this all builds into the broader philosophy of the book. The book introduces this fascinating mechanism called generation. Attempting to solve a problem before being shown the solution leads to much stronger learning. So, when you wrestle with a question and actually supply an incorrect answer before learning the truth, you're deeply fertilizing your brain to encode the correct solution later. Just the sheer act of trying to figure it out yourself primes your mind to absorb the real answer permanently.
The crucial takeaway here is that overcoming these mild difficulties builds robust mental models that you can apply seamlessly in varied situations. Short-term impediments, like retrieving, spacing, interleaving, and generating, are exactly what fuse interrelated ideas together. The book uses the example of a baseball batter. A batter has literal fractions of a second to decide how to swing. They don't have time to consciously think through the physics. Instead, they rely on highly adaptable mental models that were built through years of overcoming the difficulties of varied, mixed-up practice pitches.
Section 5. How it fits together. Building your lifelong learning toolkit. So, how do we actually apply this science to our everyday lives?
Brown, Roediger, and McDaniel explain that learning is a very active three-step journey. First, you encode your perceptions into short-term memory. That's taking the initial info in. Second, you consolidate those mental traces into long-term memory. This actually happens over hours and days as you sleep and let the information rest. And third, you retrieve and update that knowledge so you can apply it.
So what should your new learning toolkit look like? Well, it's time to ditch the comfortable, flawed habits. Throw away the highlighter and start self-quizzing. Space out your study sessions over a few days instead of pulling an exhausting all-nighter. Mix different topics and problem types together so your brain really has to work to identify the right solution. And finally, write brief reflections on what you just learned. Literally just a paragraph in your own words goes a long way to solidify those mental models.
Section 6. Who needs this book? Taking charge of your intellectual ability. Now, you might be wondering if these mechanisms really apply to you or if your intelligence is just something you were born with. The paradigm shift here is absolutely profound. The book definitively argues that intellectual abilities are not hardwired. They are completely malleable and are grown through disciplined effort and a growth mindset. Effortful learning physically changes your brain. It builds new connections. That means your intellectual abilities lie, to a surprising extent, completely within your own control. This makes the book perfect for students, teachers, corporate trainers, and really any lifelong learner wanting to hone their skills. Whether you're a neurosurgeon making life-or-death decisions in an operating room, a pilot trying to land a plane with a blown engine, or just a student prepping for final exams, this book provides the absolute blueprint for lasting mastery. Setbacks come with striving, and striving builds expertise. The authors want us to totally reframe how we look at difficulty. View failure, frustration, and those moments where your brain literally hurts trying to recall something not as a lack of ability, but as a badge of effort. It's a roadmap telling you exactly where you need to dig deeper.
So, the science of successful learning is right in front of us. We know now that easy learning is a trap, and that desirable difficulties are the real key to long-term memory. But the final question I'll leave you with is this. Are you ready to abandon the illusion of knowing and embrace the rewarding struggle of true learning? Are you willing to do the hard work required to make it stick?
If this video was useful, give it a like, subscribe, and share. More systems and frameworks in the next Eudaimanya video.